Secretly recorded from deep inside the bowels of a decommissioned missile silo, we bring you the man, one single man who wants to bring light to the darkness and dark to the lightness. Although he's not always right, he is always certain. So now, with security protocols in place, the protesters have been forced back behind the barricades and the blast doors are now sealed. Without further delay, let me introduce you to the host of Hutcast, Mr. Tim Hutner.
Thank you, Sergeant-at-Arms. You can now take your post. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely those of the individual and participants. These views and opinions expressed do not represent those of the host or the show. The opinions in this broadcast are not to replace your legal, medical, or spiritual professionals. Welcome to Hutcast. 11/19/2023, we have in our show today Jonathan Otto, an investigative journalist, filmmaker, a guy we want to put some time into. Let's listen to what he's got. So, Jonathan, are you with me?
I am with you, Tim.
Okay, we're going to start this show here in a minute, but I just want to make sure we got our pre-roll out of the way. So for Hutcast, stand by. We'll be right back. The current healthcare system is not meeting the needs of real people. People are demanding better care, better options, and want results. So Gareth Care has launched and is advocating for those in the U.S. and internationally, as people are realizing the controlled system has not been there for them. If you want your own independent advocate that is not controlled by big corporations, call or text and enroll today to get your advocate for your needs, serving all ages. For any healthcare needs you might have, you matter. Here's how you get started. www.garethcare.com. That is GRAITHCARE.com. Call Gareth Care Direct at 469-864-7149. Call or text the questions to Healthcare Sucks and get an advocate with Gareth Care. 469-864-7149. Mention Hutcast and you will get an additional 10% discount on your first advocacy bundle. The staff at Gareth Care will take care of you. Remember, mention Hutcast and get that extra 10% off your first bundle of time. And this is all brought to you from Gareth Care. As I said in pre-roll, Jonathan Otto is here. Now, he's got some information that we're going to kind of get our teeth into and listen to what he's got to say. Jonathan, are you with me?
I'm with you, Tim.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I'm doing a double header today. I just finished up with the previous session and get that edited up and all launched out. Most of my drops are at 5 o'clock on a Sunday. And if you want to tune in, we'll get you a special link so you can preview it ahead of time. But my first question is, can you tell us the journey from investigative journalism to becoming a natural health researcher, documentary filmmaker? That's a lot of title. Tell me how that all works.
Sure. Well, my passion has always been to make a difference. That was on my heart when I was a kid. And it continued to evolve. And it's really stayed the same. It was always about seeing a need and responding to it. I thought like a really strong calling when I was even as young as like 7 years old. It was interesting. I ended up working for the organization that first inspired me about humanitarian aid work, and that was World Vision by the time I was 17, so about 10 years later. And it was all about seeing the fact that people suffer due to injustice. And so justice was a strong motivator for me, which has also been a thorn in my flesh as well. People that are in relationships, and if you want to kind of operate the relationship under justice, you're going to have a problem. And so I definitely have had that too. And learned how to like understand how it all works, how faith works, how mercy and compassion work, but how unless we're striving for humanity, I don't really see much point in being here.
Right.
And so, yeah. And so then I got a degree in journalism and media production. And after I graduated, I did a postgraduate degree that actually had me in education. So I was teaching because I didn't find any interest in doing journalism on things that were basically like just what I saw already as propaganda, even though I really didn't know like a fraction of what I know now. But it was enough to just say, this is not fulfilling, so I want to impact people's lives, so I'm going to become a teacher and teach English literature. But then I felt a strong calling back. Through entrepreneurship, I found ways to make projects work, and I was traveling from Australia to America, and then started really understanding how to get a message out. And I started working on projects like The Truth About Cancer. So I worked as a producer for them for a few years, and during that time, we worked on The Truth About Vaccines, and I got exposed to information that I couldn't unlearn. I couldn't unwind that. That was, once that genie was out of the bottle, then I felt like I had to do something, and I couldn't stop. And my whole obsession became about actually how to help people heal. And it's all connected still. Like, I'm still doing a lot of work in like northern Kenya as an example. And as Tim Tebow's Foundation, who's a well-known NFL player, we're just beginning conversations, some of the things that we can't talk about, but in regard to anti-trafficking, I really respect what they're doing as a foundation. But
Okay.
It's all one common thread to me, and that is making a difference. And I think that's what we're going to focus on here when it comes to people healing and getting out of disease. And yeah, it's going to be fun.
So would you say that what was your big inspiring decision for the docuseries vacuum what do you call it? Vaccine Secrets, is it? In COVID Secrets?
Exactly. Yeah, COVID Secrets, Vaccine Secrets. Sure, the inspiration there was simply to make everything that I'd done up until that point count for something, because if I was silent on that issue, and believe me, it was a temptation, because I knew that at the time there was a bit of a cost, or a lot of a cost socially, and even from a business perspective, where there were a lot of people that didn't want to kind of go near me, even people that were health educators, but they just didn't want to touch that subject, so they were silent on it, or they were actually even encouraging their friends and family to get vaccinated, but they often weren't even public about it. But the thing there was that I just felt like this massive compromise by even considering being silent. And then I prayed about it, and was talked to my wife and told her that I really felt called, that I had to tackle this head on, and I had to be open and real about the fact that I do believe perhaps the majority of diseases that we face today are the results of intentional biological weapons that have an accumulative effect on our bodies. And I've got to tell the full story now, and I can't hold anything back. And kind of that's what that was all about. And the whole obsession then, Vaccine Secrets close to 2 years ago now, and the missing link there was that at that point I didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle. I had key elements that are still relevant, but it was continuing in that journey of finding the rest of the pieces of the puzzle. And one of them, frankly, today I'm actually meeting up with Dr. Andreas Kalka, and he is perhaps the foremost educator on chlorine dioxide. And so I'm going to be sharing about why that is so relevant, and how that has everything to do with regenerating and reversing chronic disease, including cancer, and certainly COVID and vaccine injuries, and how it has to do with the body's electrical system, and how this is a critical component that's being kept from us. But
right.
That's what that was all about.
So could you share some of the most groundbreaking discoveries you've made through your docuseries? Sure.
So I would say some of the most groundbreaking discoveries that I've made through my docuseries have been the biological weapon component was a shocker, because it was an original conversation that I had with Dr. Brian Ardis, where I said to him, these heart attacks, this reminds me so much of this 1975 Senate hearing where I saw the public disclosure of the heart attack gun, and it makes me think of that. It makes me think that this is the only thing I've ever seen to be able to create a heart attack in such an insidious way, because it was an undetected gun that made a heart attack using shellfish venom. And he was silent. He said, I can't say anything about that, because he had discovered that. And for me, it was a question. So I hadn't done the research yet. And then he then went public on that. And then after he released the film Watch the Water, that got close to somewhere around 10 million views, I started doing like more heavy documentation in various areas of that, and he was doing more research and investigation that was helping him develop his conclusions to a point where some people that dismissed it, then if they really sat down and looked at it, it became impossible to dismiss. And that was the thing for me, because I actually wanted to avoid the subject, to be honest, because it kind of seemed like it would come with a huge fallout again. Like it was
right.
like
the
group kept getting smaller, because I was like, man, I already kind of got kicked out of one group. Now you're going to get me kicked out of this other group, and now the other group, and how small is this little thing going to be? But the thing there was, it's still a call to purity. Like, just tell the truth. Don't hold back any punches and think you can do good by doing that. Just be real. And so that's what I chose to do. And then on that basis, what happened to him was that my whole obsession was about how do you help these people get better? Like, I don't know, what is it, 7 billion people potentially, somewhere around there, potentially have been vaccinated. If we don't know how to turn this around, we're screwed. So no wonder I was like obsessed with the subject area. And this venom aspect was a critical piece that unless I saw it through this lens, I would be limited in my approach. And I might be able to kind of work out some therapies that would work, but I really wouldn't have much of an understanding of why they were working, and it wouldn't alert me to other therapies that I wouldn't have considered. And that's where the nicotine therapy came in, like using nicotine. Urine therapy came in. These are both anti-venom therapies. I see them work across the board for so many different diseases that aren't even understood typically to be vaccine related or COVID related. And it comes back to a venom aspect. And I'm talking about like Guillain-Barré basically reversed in a matter of days, when people are like bedridden, hospitalized, can't move their body. I'm talking about cases of, I mean, these are the ones I personally witnessed: chronic bleeding, all the kind of vaginal issues that come with like ovarian pain and bleeding of the uterus, and some of them in regard to shedding, others in regard to people getting the vaccines, heart palpitations that like completely would classify as a myocarditis diagnosis. I've seen people basically take a therapy that I've suggested and have heart palpitations previous to that for 2 years without a break in any single day. And then the first day they do the therapy, they never have a heart palpitation again. And they're like almost a year out now of, I've seen cases like this. And so it kind of makes you have a burden to tell the story and let people know that there is hope, there is healing. But you've got to have the premise right, and you've got to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. Then you'll stay the course. Because, for example, if you whack a nicotine patch on and then you've got all this kind of religious programming, because I mean, I'll seldom drink coffee. I don't take any stimulants. I certainly don't take any drugs, and I don't drink alcohol. So when I'm saying nicotine, I'm using it for a specific purpose because it's going to compete for a nicotine receptor that venoms are binding to. So unless you've got a better approach, show me. But if you're getting chronic nausea when you put this patch on, I'm not talking about smoking. I'm talking about using it in different formats.
Sure.
But if you do that, exactly. If you do that therapy, then you get nausea. Don't give up, because if you're releasing poisons out of your body, just know what you're doing, why you're doing it, because then you can stay the course, and then bind it as well. Don't let it just circulate in your body. Use a therapy that will help bind that and get that out, like urine therapy, like EDTA, other binders, chlorine dioxide. So, there's more to tell here though.
Right. So you obviously talked to Dr. Brian Artis. Yeah, he's a good guy. Been on the show a couple times. Absolutely love his work.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
And when I'm hearing you, I'm almost like I'm listening to a mirror. Yeah. You guys are like in total sync right now.
True. Yeah, true.
So when you go about selecting experts and the doctors for interviews for your show, how do you do that? I mean, do you just kind of like, hey, how are we going to tell us that process?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of, I'm looking for missing pieces of a puzzle. And like, let's say, for example, Dr. Artis, as an example, to this point in this day, I don't think last time I checked, he'd never done urine therapy as an example. So I know that for him in that way, he's not going to have that active experience at this point in time. And there's some people that are doing nicotine that aren't getting better. And so I'm obviously not dissing his work. He's one of my best friends, and he's one of my most respected colleagues. And he'd probably admit, if you just got him on, he'd probably be like, yeah, I admit that can't kind of work out how to do that. Other people, they just kind of go for it and do it. And the biology makes sense, because if you realize that you were born in a womb that was basically filled with urine, was practically only urine, and you were drinking only urine for like between 3 months and 9 months, and that's what you were sustained on. That's how you self-healed in the womb, and that was the original design. And now you're dismissing that. 1 liter of urine has 8.49 kilowatts of energy that could power a house for 8 hours. And while we're drinking dead water that doesn't have any kind of real nutrients, even if you're filtering it, you've got distilled water with a perfect filtration system, which is so perfect. Babies are born in it. So perfect that people will use it for stem cell sources, for regeneration of their knees and all kinds of things there. And then, people then dismiss this because they don't think it works. But so that gives you an idea of, like, let's say I'll have Dr. Otto share a therapy that's critical, and then I'll say, okay, now who else is willing to educate or understand, or just kind of, that's their personal conviction. I don't think that he should kind of fit into any model I should put for him. He's called to a certain area, just like Dr. Andreas Kalker is called to another area with chlorine dioxide, and that's what he's educating on, almost as a solo therapy, which I think is great in one essence, and in another essence, there is a need for people like me that will basically give people that smorgasbord of options, because there are many cases where people will use one of these therapies and it's still not getting them out of that chronic state, and there are other cases where they'll use one single therapy and they'll get out of that chronic state. So that's what causes me to select based on the things that I think work. There's an alignment, there's a certain process that I go through where I'm thinking, well, what makes sense, what works? If you look at all the different things I'm talking about, even in this, I'm looking at things that are going to get to the root cause. I'm looking at things that resemble biology. I am looking at things in a theistic way, that we were created by God, and the original design and creation and how God made us does help me navigate that. So I will kind of see that it does make sense that we are supposed to be in the sun enough to, like, because of where we came from, that God made us in a way that just to soak in the sun in the original design. He did make us to be eating fresh food. Meat was something that kind of came after like a fall, even though I get it, it's normal, people are into it. My wife still, she modulates a bit, and I'm mostly, I'm practically plant-based.
Okay.
So then you can see that part of the driving there is like looking at the original design, but it's not from a dogmatic perspective. It's just saying, okay, well, look, if you had one diet to reverse disease, people would say, sure, well, maybe carnivore diet. But if you put carnivore diet against a raw plant-based diet and you look at the results, I'll give you an example. My sister-in-law, my wife's sister, she had lupus since the age of 9 years old. And then she had, rheumatoid arthritis since the age of 9 years old. And she had lupus, which she got she'd had it over a decade. And then in 4 weeks on a raw plant-based diet where she was blending about a pound or a pound and a half of cruciferous vegetables and no cooked food. And in 4 weeks, her markers were as if she'd never had lupus. And I got a medical doctor to go through those documents on camera and just, let's look at this. And it was completely true. It was no hype involved, nothing to sell, because it's just a plant-based diet. So, these gives you a bit of clues there. But like, if somebody's like, yeah, but I don't want to live like that, it's like, okay, no worries. Well, there are a lot of these therapies that are going to work fantastic, and God always meets us where we're at. And, I'm not saying that I understand everything. I'm just saying there's a lens that I'm understanding the world through, that everyone understands the world through a lens. So just kind of get clear on that and take some time, meditate, or whatever you need to do, pray, get clear on your beliefs, because they'll help navigate your path as to what you think healing should look like for you. And at least you've got conviction. If you've got conviction, you're going to be solid.
Sure. And give us a glimpse into how your process is of uncovering natural remedies for various health conditions. So like this urine one you're talking about. So what was that process?
Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah, well, urine, it's so interesting, right? So firstly, Dr. Rashid Buttar was a good friend. You know who he is, right?
I have not interviewed him yet, but he's on my list.
Well, Dr. Rashid Buttar, sadly, he's passed. I don't know if...
Oh.
Yeah, does that... does that ring a bell now that I bring that up?
It does. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. It's just obviously really sad, but because if he was sitting there on your list, you wanted to interview him. It's sad that we missed that opportunity. He's not with us here in this life. We'll have to wait till the next to be with him again.
Yeah.
But he was a dear friend and mentor, and he was prominent. Prominent people that people like in the media. It's so forth, like people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., like prominent athletes, and were his patients. He helped a lot of people with cancer. He had over 120 cancer patients that were 10 years past their stage 3 or stage 4 diagnosis, and he was a fearless soul, and that's what I resonated with about him. And I mentioned before that I had some apprehension to kind of put myself out on the front line because of the potential fallout, safety, anything, like just kind of the natural social, especially the social aspects and the potential financial aspects, because, like who wants to have everything shut down and kind of be reset, but then on the other hand, who wants to live like you don't say what you think, and that's hell. So he was the one that always motivated me and gave me that courage to follow the path that I was on, and we always had like this affinity, and he was just a kind soul. And I would quiz him frequently and say, Rashid, like, how do you reverse the vaccine injury? How do you do it? And then he would say, there is no way. And I'm like, look, I'm not going to air this content. I'm not going to put this out there.
Okay.
And so I never did. I would never air when he would give that answer. I said, no, it's like, and he would kind of say it in this matter-of-fact way. And then one day he called me and he said, well, I've got it. I know the answer. I know how to do it now. So, okay, well, I know that you're not kind of just give me what I want to hear. You actually going with your conviction. What do you think it is? And then he said something that I thought was crazy. And I just thought,
what's that?
Man, you're getting too excited. Urine. He said urine is the answer, because it's got your original DNA, and it's your original code is there in your urine. And it's not a waste product. It actually is a regenerative product. And then he cited, he was Muslim actually, and he cited some Bible verses that I thought, I wonder whether that's supposed to be applied there or not. But verses that talked about living water, out of his own belly, it will flow rivers of living water. Revelation, even though that, who knows exactly what that means? It's obviously a very spiritual reference to the abundance of love and connection to God. But what is living water? And if there are stem cells in urine, which I'll talk about that, then that would certainly be the highest affinity to something called living water. And in Revelation, I don't know, was it 21 or 22? It says, I beheld a river clear as crystal proceeding from the throne of God and from the Lamb. It's a river, and it was a river of life. And then Proverbs 5 is an interesting one that says, drink water from thine own well, draw water from thine own cistern. And then Proverbs actually has a lot of references to Egyptian texts as well, which is interesting. And it's not that the Bible like plagiarizes it. It's just that it's using a lot of cultural references that I believe completely inspired by God. But when you look at it, Judaism and Egyptian culture, they both had very strong cultures and histories of urine therapy. And even though the Proverbs 5 reference was really a reference to adultery, it in its most applicable understanding, the other like shadow of the dual potential meaning was to actually drink water from your own cistern, meaning that your body is going to code for you unique information that is for you and only for you. And then you see that real time in the womb. And it's interesting, it does model also Genesis 2, where the baby actually is taking in urine through its nostrils and through its mouth. And it's at around the 10-week mark that urine goes through those orifices and is creating those orifices and is forming the lungs at that point. And then these stem cells that are actually in the urine, which the Wake Forest University, the Institute of Regenerative Medicine, just proved this last year, where they found 140 stem cells in a 24-hour urine sample from a single adult. And then when they let those 140 stem cells sit for 3 weeks in airtight flasks, they found that they proliferated at a rate of 1 × 10⁸8, which is 100 million. So they had 100 million mesenchymal-like stem cells, meaning that they resembled a mesenchymal cell, which is an amniotic fluid stem cell is a mesenchymal stem cell, which shouldn't be a shock because the amniotic fluid is the urine. And you can have mesenchymal stem cells from the bone marrow, but the one that's painless and the one that is through a filtrate, which is the urine, is plasma ultrafiltrate. It's a filtrate of the body, which means that it's actually purified, sterilized. I'm putting forward that it's the safest version, and then it has such a high proliferation rate, and it's the mesenchymal stem cell that it is well, it's technically classed as a urine-derived stem cell, but it resembles a mesenchymal stem cell in its doubling time and its immunophenotype. So these are the building blocks of life, and it makes sense that they go in the nostrils and the mouth in the 10-week mark and form the lungs. And because it's filled with stem cells, and those stem cells are actually what generates the lungs. If the baby doesn't produce urine, it dies at the 10-week mark. It's so critical. And so what happens with a stem cell is a stem cell will attach to a genetic blueprint, and then it will form what it's instructed to do from that genetic blueprint. That's why I could inject stem cells straight into your knee, and even if you didn't have cartilage, because the genetic blueprint of what is supposed to be there is there, that information is there, it will code and match and then grow into that cell. And that's the power of an undifferentiated stem cell. Wow. So that's what you have with urine. And so I found it so fascinating. Rashid at that point didn't know that, but he told me the premise, and I thought it was crazy, but I just kept thinking about it. I kind of couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I started doing my own research, and then I heard Dr. Ed Group present. And Dr. Ed Group and I, we have the site urinetherapy.com. That's a project that we're doing together just to educate people for free on that subject. People can download a ton of amazing free books on all the subjects I'm talking about in regard to that subject. Just all there, people can download it with no email required or anything. It's just it's our attempt to get this therapy to the 7 billion people that need it right now. But yeah, that gives you a bit of a window into urine therapy, and it's kind of flirts with the idea of why it could be so effective for so many different disease processes.
Sure. And what I've got here is, so you kind of ran the lines between my next two questions. I'm going to read them to you, and then maybe you can just kind of summarize both of them in one thing. And again, you've touched on one of them. So the first question is, what motivated you to start the wellness life and develop a doctor-formulated natural supplements? And then the second question is, could you share some success stories or testimonies from the individuals who you have benefited from your protocols?
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. And so the motivation for well of life, right? So slight close on the name, and the same essence is there, but well of life, which is kind of memorable in the essence that Jesus referred to himself as the well of life. And so it's kind of a name there that denotes to have a wellspring of life coming out of your own soul, and that God, Jesus, our creator, is our source of healing. That's kind of what the name is, the story that is being told in the name. And so what motivated that was simply kind of this excitement around what it would feel like to be a part of the winning team, to not only educate people but create products that made such a benefit. So kind of held these things in tandem, educate people. And that is just so wonderful, because there's a lot of things I'm talking about, like urine therapy. You don't have to spend a single penny. And I'm saying it may be, in fact, the most powerful substance you can possibly put in your body. If you do your own research on stem cells, I don't know how you could even propose to me that I am in any way incorrect in my sentence or sentiment there, that it is the most powerful substance. So then why would I even do supplements then?
Sure.
The reason why I do supplements is to obstruct barriers and to create a greater purity in the body to help that process, even though I wouldn't say anyone should ever hold back, because there's, if you have more toxins, it's even more of a reason to do urine therapy, because it doesn't have toxins. You just do your own research and kind of understand biology, look at the womb, look at how babies would not survive in the womb without urine. And if the urine was toxic, if that was an elimination method, what would happen is the baby would reinfect itself every time. In that every 3 hours that it's basically urinating and drinking, it would compound the toxic levels that are coming actually through the umbilical cord. So the toxins are there, and then it goes through its ears and eyes, and the poor baby would just suffer and die. And that's what would happen. But the opposite is true. They come out as if they'd just been at a beauty salon for like 9 months straight. and their skin is so soft and supple. But so there are no so I kind of took a detour there, but there are no toxins in urine. But so then why am I saying that? Why would it be amazing to do a supplement protocol? One, a lot of people aren't going to do what I'm saying, but I want them to, and a lot of people will. And there are certain things that I think that they absolutely need that, because it needs your original DNA, all these kinds of things. But supplements, like, I've seen cases of people, well before I ever knew about urine therapy, reverse the most chronic, debilitating conditions. And I'll go with some results, like Natalia Voloshin. She was just an incredible case study, because she had spent $200,000, 5.5 years trying to get better. 30 specialists, half of those were functional medicine doctors and naturopaths. The other half were, major conventional clinics like Cleveland Clinic.
Okay.
Nobody could help her get better.
Yeah.
So after that point, if you're left with still having 4 autoimmune conditions, which included myositis, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and vasculitis, that was so severe that the doctors blatantly said to her that in 2 weeks, both your legs were going to have to be amputated unless you take high-dose chemo and steroids.
Oh,
so
boy.
obviously she opted in for the steroids and the chemo. That was damaging her kidneys. Her kidneys were shrinking. One of her kidneys shrank, and she was losing kidney function. And then she said, well, what do I do? And they said, don't worry, we'll just put you on dialysis once that happens. So this was going nowhere fast, and she had become very suicidal, sadly.
Oh, boy.
And she had never experienced depression before in her life, and now she could just not stop obsessing about suicide. And this is one of the memories for me of why that was so important. She watched a series I created called Autoimmune Secrets, which is all about getting to the root cause of autoimmune disease. I made that series maybe 6 years ago, and she watched that, and then she just thought, well, what the heck? And then she bought maybe $150 worth of supplements or something. It was just crazy. And then she started taking them. She thought, there's no way this could be true. And one of her friends had cancer. She used the protocols, and she allegedly recovered. And it was quite convincing for her to think about the possibility. But she thought, I tried so many things, it's not possible. And that's kind of what happens as well. People get stuck that they think they tried everything. But she said the difference with what you did was that you did things in sequences, whereas everyone else talked about this one certain thing and this other thing, and maybe a couple of things, but not all of the things that you talked about, and not in the sequence you talked about them. And then she started getting better, so much to the point where she started taking the supplements into the doctors, giving her chemo and steroids, and said,
Wow.
not
Incredible.
Yeah, I'm not taking the drugs anymore. And they said, it's not possible. How are your markers going down? Because your inflammation levels are so high and markers are so high, they couldn't register them at the Cleveland Clinic. They was they're off our scales. We don't have a reading. And then here she is within normal range. She says, I'm not taking the chemo and steroids. And they're like, this is not possible. We don't know what could be happening. And she says, is this? And then she took all her supplements, and she said, these very good doctors, she's Estonian. She said, these very good doctors, very intelligent, by the way. When she had to quit her job, do you know how many people had to replace her just to replace one position? Three people. She's an engineer, an electrical engineer, a lecturer, just quite a genius mind. She said, in Estonia, we don't have to be as good as men in order to be equal with them in the workplace. We have to be much better to be even considered to be equal. So she had this drive to be great and to do well, and she was then her life was ruined. But she turned it all around. She's back to swimming and cycling. Her legs are so beautiful and slim, and just kind of what any mid-60s woman would just dream to have. Her body is basically the perfect body for somebody in just perfect shape and health and fitness. And just her smile, her vibrancy, her joy for life is something that I just kind of keep with me every day.
Well, let me do this. I had to take a commercial break here, Jonathan. And when we come back, I'd like to talk about some misconceptions people have about natural remedies. Can you stand by a moment?
I'd love to.
Okay. Hudcast will be right back. Buying a gun is no ordinary purchase. Whether you're a hunter, competitive shooter, or self-defense is your priority, There are many kinds of guns and many kinds of training programs. You use your brain all the time. You will rarely need to use your gun. Before you find yourself in a situation where you need to make a critical decision, make sure your training is the best you can get. It could be the difference between life and death, or freedom or detention. For the best quality training, check out permittocarry.us. If you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin or even Florida, give Gene German a call, 612-388-2403. That's Permit to Carry US. Or call Gene German at 612-388-2403. Welcome back to the Hutcast. Jonathan Otto, a heck of a journalist, a filmmaker, you name it, this guy's been doing it. And we've been talking to him for the last 30 minutes, and I'll tell you what, we're going to start out with this new one. Are you with me there, Jonathan?
I am with you, Tim.
Okay. What are some of the misconceptions people have about natural medicine and remedies? And how do you balance your role as a filmmaker, researcher, and humanitarian in this whole thing you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, man, I happen to be on most of the most controversial treatments. Like, here's a guy talking about nicotine for healing like neurological conditions and referencing studies on Parkinson's and cancer, gliomas, aggressive brain tumors, and Tourette syndrome and tinnitus. And I can show you studies, published studies on PubMed, peer-reviewed, that will show you these conditions being largely either halted or being put into remission or showing the signs that they're being reversed systemically through that therapy. And so clearly there's a misconception here, because you just kind of go, it's just the lack of innovation and critical thinking of just saying, yeah, but I think that is connected to cigarette smoking and that gives you cancer. And instead of saying, well, what's the core substance? Is it possible that I misunderstood this? Or is it possible that God made a substance that does interact well with the body, and there's something that has changed in it? Mankind has changed this. That alteration that has been done, in this case, pyrazines was an addictive chemical that was added to it to make it addictive.
Okay.
So now you can explain the addictive nature of that. It's a Harvard study that backs that up. Or the 600 chemicals that got added to it for the various purposes, all of which that, like, you can bust a cigarette or tobacco, you've got like 7,000, 6,000 chemicals,
sure,
70 of which are known carcinogens. And now you're basically taking like about a whole bunch of reasons here that are all negative, that aren't connected to the reason and the application I'm saying to use it for, like to put a patch on, to use gum, to soak your feet, or to make a tea out of that tobacco, or to simply take an extract from eggplant or tomatoes or potatoes and actually take an eggplant to an extraction to get that nicotine, and then to use it in that form. And so I'm not even saying it has to be from tobacco. I'm saying use something that then binds to those alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptors so that you can get your disease into remission. So that highlights, I'm using a story and an illustration point to show you that the biggest problem here is a lack of innovation and critical thinking, and like I know it all attitude that causes people to stay sick and causes even holistic doctors to miss critical therapies that would save their patients' lives. And that's the travesty of what I'm seeing unfold on a daily basis, with people just not being willing to reconsider everything.
And how do you balance that?
You push back and you say, well, what does the science say? And how do you, can you see proof of this? Do you see real life case studies that validate this finding? Same with chlorine dioxide. That's bleach. That's going to be toxic. It's going to be poisonous. But okay, well then show me. Let's say, what's it going to be toxic to? The kidneys, the liver. Okay, well then let's see. Do your markers go up or down for like kidney function if you take it? And if you're showing the markers of your kidney function is actually better than normal, and if you see this consistent and repeatable, then you can no longer keep pushing forward that this is going to be damaging to the kidneys. And then if you're seeing conditions put into remission, if you see that, if you see that, like, let's say if we were to get water and we're trying to see if a light bulb will light up by basically putting the conductors into the water. In the case of water, then that's just dead. No light bulb. Sorry. And then you've got something like distilled water, sadly. I'm a fan of distilled water, but you'll see that goes down, no light. Let's say if you use chlorine dioxide, bright light, so you see that it's conducive. It doesn't mean that like there are some things that will light up a light bulb that will be toxic. But again, like that's why I also share the other elements of that. And then urine, absolutely, it's distilled and it has minerals and nutrients, metabolites technically, and compounds that are incredibly beneficial. Thousands and thousands of them, like potentially right around maybe 3,000 in a daily urine sample. Certainly, there's 5,600 documented. People can find on urinmetabolome.ca. But you basically then you just dig deeper and you reconsider things and you seek to see real life case studies. Like there's a book, Martha Christie's Your Own Perfect Medicine. There are so many cases of cancer being put into remission. In fact, these are big. Like 1948, there was 300 doctors that presented thousands of laboratory studies and hundreds of human case studies of cancer being put into remission over a 12-year period, completely by using the H11 extract of urine. I believe it was injected to the subcutaneous fat, but it was injections, urine injections. And they presented this in 1948. It was a conference in Europe, and it was to the medical boards, and it was completely pushed back on and pushed down. And that was during the time as well. Urine was in the Merck manual as a treatment. You saw it as the most studied, documented single medical substance by far. It was then getting used in every type of medication, from blood clot drugs like urokinase, which is also used as a cancer drug, to murine for ear infections and for eye problems, which is just urine with the letter M in front, synthetic urine there. Okay. You see it for skin, for urea, for burns. You see so many applications, and yet it's being demonized. And urea for cancer. It's just it's remarkable. Sure. You just got to look at the science and reconsider your perspectives.
So let's shift a gear.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the awards you received from the Australian government about your humanitarian contributions.
Cool, sure. So when I was actually like one of them was when I was 17 in school. My school principal had nominated me for Young Citizen of the Year, and so that was through it wasn't a school award, it was a government award, and that was because at that school, like the teachers and the students were all very aware that I was every year educating people on all the global issues, which is interesting. Now that I talk about this, because I don't actually talk about this much, but it's a surreal thought to think about how I didn't have a single friend that was interested in that. So and I don't know, like part of me felt awkward being like this kid that was talking about stuff that like no one cares about this, man. I'd get people behind it and we'd raise a lot of money and that kind of thing, which is cool, but like none of my close friends really knew much or cared much about that. But it was always kind of just this personal thing that I had. And then I received that award back. I mean, that was 2003. And I'd become an ambassador for World Vision at that same time. Those things happen independent of each other, but so there was clearly a direction in life that I was going in. I think it was that same school teacher. But this was the thing, like when I mentioned the fallout, it was because I was like in that sense, I was kind of a naughty kid in earlier grades because like by grade 8, grade 9, and I was 7, I was in the wrong crowd and getting in trouble. I got suspended from school once, and they saw a turn happen in my life, just more purpose and drive, and like I just kind of walked away from those negative influences and then found myself doing just driven by humanitarian work, which is kind of not usual for a kid, but it can be usual. And that's why I was so passionate about educating children about how to be connected. And so the thing that we worked out there was that if we just connect, hey, Ashley, I love you. my 4-year-old was just running to see me. I'm going to blow you a kiss, big boy. My passion there was just continued to fuel me to different things, and so I worked alongside other organizations and worked for them, like World Vision, and I went through places like Mongolia and Papua New Guinea, Tanzania, Mozambique, Kenya.
That's a lot. That's a lot of places.
Yeah, and some of them I was alone as well, like early 20s. I was 17 when I first went to Tanzania. I was with a group, but there were certain instances where I was alone, and like you really start to develop your own independence and trust in God when you're in a situation like that. I'm not recommending it, but I'm saying that that's kind of like what happened for me, which I'm grateful for that, because it also taught me that in independence, you have to have your own independent thought. If you want to get better, if you want to understand things, or for me, if I want to be a good journalist, I can't think like in the pack. I've got to completely get good at independent thinking and get good at connecting my own dots so that you can be an innovator. And I'll give you an example. When I was with Dr. Richard Urso, he was basically chief at MD Anderson, medical doctor, that was doing research on stem cells and cancer stem cells and how to re-educate a cancer stem cell. And back in 1982, and I was just talking to him basically last weekend. I was interviewing live on camera, and so we got the footage. It was quite amazing. I said, yeah, but look how you got the study wrong based on this element and how this would have worked if you used this. And he said, well, that's an interesting hypothesis. It sounds right. It sounds like it would potentially work, but it would be interesting. I guess, it's not proven. I said, it has been proven already. And in this case, I'm not necessarily even innovating, but I then took him to a study done in 1966, which was in Atlantic City in New Jersey, that was showing that the two researchers, every time they would put urine, it was called Directin, it was another extract with cancer cells, those cancer cells would align themselves into straight rows. And so this was basically showing that it's actually normal, and it's been discovered that a mesenchymal stem cell will attach to a tumor, and it shows the signs that it's educating a cancer stem cell of how to differentiate back into a normal healthy cell. And so I showed him these different things. His mind was blown. So anyway, this just gives you an idea of like independent thinking. He's certainly the one that's trained in the subject area. I'm the one that is catching up. But innovation and having a great thesis, having a connection or belief in God or theism, things that anchor you to certain things that are true. I believe that they are true. I've seen the evidence of those things, so it also proves my faith, which is beautiful. But and then coming full circle, the other project was I was then doing this work in Mozambique, and it was with a famine that broke out in. It was early 2010s, and I went into that fight, and I was lobbying the government in Australia with the local politicians, saying, "Look, this is a cause. How to get behind this?" And it was one of the local politicians that saw the work I was doing there, and she nominated me for International Volunteer of the Year, and I got awarded with that
awesome.
Year. So that's kind of how that all happened. I was just kind of putting my head down doing the work. I didn't apply for any of those things, just for the record.
It just came out there.
Yeah, I did apply for some other film awards, and we've won some film awards in various countries and things like that. But this was something that was just kind of independent, because this work to me, the best things that anyone ever does is the things you do in private. So if I'm talking about that publicly, it's no longer one of the best things I've ever done. The best things I do are the things that only God knows, just for the record. But I will talk about things publicly, because I think that we need to have a culture of how do we give back and recognize causes. And also, if somebody thinks I'm a snake oil salesman because I have a supplement company, or because I'm teaching people to drink their urine or something else, they deserve to know another side. They deserve to know that, because it doesn't make sense to me that somebody would be showing up that way in life. And if you can go verify the facts or all the things I'm saying are true, then just drop the story and just think maybe he is out there to do good, and everyone is. We're all humans here, but what if we're all trying to do good here? So why don't we see the best in each other? And that's what I've committed to do for myself and others.
Well, I heard you talk to your little boy there. Is it a boy, was it?
Yeah.
And it leads me to another question: is how has becoming a father influenced your work and your priorities?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Well, like even there where he was running towards me and I was like, Asher, don't come to the phone. I was trying to teach him something in the sense that like, um, so that he can understand the barrier, but then he put his head down, he looked disappointed. And then, and so then I also like wanted to make sure that I showed him that like he's special. And so I was happy then I was okay to interrupt the call and just address him and let him know that I see him. But also trying to help him understand like how to navigate and be okay with that and know that it's not rejection. And so like, that's a classic kind of example in a way of how do I bring him on this journey and not like kind of treat this other work I'm doing and doing what I can to be a part of the healing and the help or for the world. How do I, bring him on that mission and my 2-year-old on that mission and my wife on that mission? And that's been the greatest challenge. And how do I keep my marriage together? As I'm traveling and doing different things, how do I show her that she's a priority? And these are the hardest things, man.
No,
and,
big time.
Yeah. And so I've frequently failed in this area, but I've also succeeded as well. And I've seen that, we just actually had our 10-year anniversary and we had more problems than your average, I would say. Anyone could say anything, but I'm open about it, like, because I want people to know that God can heal marriages and God can heal breakdowns and God can, just bring people together when there's a war. And certainly my wife had gone through a lot of that. And some of that was not just to do with the work, but the way that I approach work or the obsessive nature at which I do things. And so I had to learn as well. And she also had to learn certain things. Like we were just kind of having to navigate that. And we found lots of truth and help and hope and our connection to God and being anchored to that deeper motivation, purpose, having something to model. Because for me, without faith, I think that it'd be just really hard for me. I know a lot of people, like, they have various things that they anchor to and that help them. But I think that's how God shows up, regardless of the exact way people understand it.
Right.
There is that pull, there is that inkling, there is that connection that is like a compass that guides you in life. And that comes through conviction and purpose, and you know what is right and wrong within your soul. And
you have to remember now.
You go for it. What are you going to say?
You have to remember that. How does it put? The wicked has no rest, and the righteous don't need any.
Yeah, that's funny. Is that a?
That's from the Bible, dude. That's from the Bible.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to see if it is. I think it might be. There's no rest for the wicked, which is in Revelation. I think that might be. You might be augmenting that.
I'm sure I am. Yeah, I'm sure I am.
But which would kind of, you could denote that there's no rest for the wicked, which would mean that. But that would actually mean that there is rest for the not.
And the righteous don't need any.
Well, if that's a verse, I don't think it is. But this would be interesting. The audience can look it up because I'm on the spot here. Like, does Jonathan know the Bible well enough to know that that's not a verse? That's the question. And so we're about to find out why people Google this.
Yes, Google it out.
Yeah.
So my next question is, give us a spoiler alert. Is there any upcoming projects or docuseries that you are currently working on or planning without giving tipping the hat too far?
Yeah, sure. Always. So I am meeting with Dr. Andreas Kalker, sorry. And he is doing some amazing things with chlorine dioxide. So we're, by the way, so there, I put in those exact words. So there aren't any verses that say that. It's the Isaiah 48, which is, there is no peace, says God, for the wicked. Isaiah 58:21. That's the verse. But what you're saying is like a proverb or something that people like. It's like a saying, right? So kind of, which is interesting. But I would say that the righteous absolutely do need rest. So that's why I'm countering it, not just to be
right.
Not just to be witty. It's to say, no, I personally believe that the righteous absolutely need rest, and rest is connected to to God. It's why it's one of the 10 commandments to honor the Sabbath and keep it holy, and to rest, one day a week. And there's multiple societies that have tried to break that. The French Revolution was one. Stalin was another, where they changed either to a 10-day week or a 5-day week, and it just messed everything up. It caused a lot of breakdown in society. So very interesting. But back to that, I would say that the things that are coming up. So chlorine dioxide, I am going to be talking more about that and how that is working. I am going to be publishing more on urine therapy and how it works and why it works, and the studies and the connection to cancer. And I am doing a lot now with cancer research, because I think that whether it's like repurposed drugs like fenbendazole, mebendazole, ivermectin, I do think they do have credibility and they have a purpose there, especially the natural alternatives of the antiparasitics, which may prove to be better as well. So that's a body of work and an investigation that I'm kind of on, in a way, or very much in. So urine therapy, the proof around the things that have been discovered, really, especially over the last 100 years, that have been published, and proving that inside of new discoveries like stem cell science, which is really only 15 or so years old, our understandings of the stem cells, but then showing how those things come together. So there's quite a few things here, Tim, and I'm excited to be sharing it with my friends.
Awesome. So we're getting to be 21 minutes here. I want to ask you a closing thought. In your opinion, what is the most important message you hope to convey through your docu-series and research?
Sure. Well, I think that the most important message that I hope to give is hope, and hope that is based on reality. And I want people to see that whatever they're struggling with, suffering with, there are answers. And it makes sense if you believe that there is a God, and that then God loves his children, that he's always created a way. There are solutions that are not expensive or are free, that would literally cost millions of dollars per year. Stem cells in urine would be a classic example of that, because 100 million stem cells would cost at least $15,000. And if you could get that in 24 hours by just aging your urine and potentially doing an NMR, that's just an example. But if you're looking at these kinds of things, then you start seeing hope. And that's why in all my documentary series, people will see the case studies and the breakthroughs, and people heal. And then it just brings so much hope and excitement into people's lives that it's part of the reason why we've had probably like 5 million people register to watch our films. There's probably somewhere around 100 million views across all our different videos,
nice.
Different platforms, other projects I've worked on. Yeah, collectively, absolutely.
Okay. What am I forgetting here? So we got that. I'm reviewing my notes here. Wonderful closing message. Let's plug this. How do the people get a hold of you? How do they watch you? Tell us the vehicle in which you're best viewed on.
Sure, absolutely. So I would say definitely looking at, let's say, for example, if people are interested in looking into holistic supplements, fulvic acid, by the way, was the key in a lot of Natalia's journey, her story, her healing. So fulvic acid, and we do a lot. We've got some of the best that I know of, for sure, and that's why it works so well, because her legs were going gangrene. So cellular healing, looking at nano particles and how you get into the cell, or pico is smaller, picometers, or they're very smaller. But you're looking at therapies that get to those levels and get inside the cell, get toxins out. Welloflife.com is where we've got our antiparasitics and toxin binders to help people in their health and healing. So that's welloflife.com. And then you've got our series, our documentary series, Healing Genesis, is one that people can go and watch, which is healingseries.com.
Okay.
So that's healingseries.com. And people can go and watch the 9-episode series on basically Healing Genesis, which is all about reversing disease. It goes through all the different protocols I talked about in regard to nicotine and urine therapy and other therapies, whether it's using how to use, let's say, vitamin C, or how to use other natural protocols for health and healing, how it integrates with other therapies. That's a 9-part documentary series. Fantastic way to get a hold of me there. And then obviously you can just look me up on Facebook, my name, and Instagram. And our TikTok channels, we've got like close to 500,000 followers between the two channels. One of them in my name, Jonathan Otto, the other one, True Health Secrets. But you kind of, I'll be around. The best way to see all my stuff is to subscribe to the newsletter, which you can do at healingseries.com. When you subscribe, then everything that we're releasing, and we release our content free. We invite people to purchase so they can own the physical materials, and that supports our mission so we can keep doing it. But we continue, and we have been doing so, to release our content free so people all around the world can access it and enjoy it and use it to help them reverse chronic disease.
Outstanding. What a wonderful interview. Thank you for giving up some of your Sunday with your kids. I appreciate it. Jonathan Otto, investigative journalist, filmmaker, holistic guy, the guy. So I appreciate you coming in or taking your time, and I'll let you get back to your loved ones. And anything else you want to add before we bounce?
It's awesome, man. I'm excited. I think that's fantastic.
Okay. Well, for Hutcast, for you Australian listeners, we got someone from home. Let me know what you think on the Hatebook site. We call it Hatebook because everything can start a fight there. And yeah, just let us know. Let us know what your thoughts are. So for Hutcast, have a wonderful afternoon. We'll be back next week. Thank you. And that's a wrap for Hutcast. Hutcast is, again, a pragmatic approach to seeing things how some people see them. If you like our show, give us a thumbs up on the Facebook site. Again, for Hutcast, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.